oh, porn is not real. It is a performance. It is curated for the viewer's delight to titillate you and excite you. Like, it is not actually a real experience. And I am always still shocked when I have conversations with people and I say that and they're like, oh, really?
All right, everyone, it is interview time. And we are here with OMG, Keeley motherfucking Rankin. Sorry, I had to say it that way.
I like
I was
it.
like, we're here with OMG.
No,
What?
no, it's Keeley Rankin. And this is her 5th time on our show. And we absolutely love and adore her. Her first episode was 184 about ED, ejaculatory control, delayed ejaculation, delayed orgasm. And we are doing a round 2 of that, but we are just going to talk about penis shame in general and include size and all kinds of other things. And yeah, Keeley's the best. And we are so excited.
She's in our book multiple times.
Like a lot.
And we talk about, I remember when the publishers were editing it and they're like, what is breathing into your asshole? And we're like, great question, because that came from Keeley's tips. So I just wanted to commend you for the breathing into your asshole, because I had to think about it and let them know what that meant.
I forgot.
That was fun.
It was very confusing for them. They're like, wait, so you can breathe into your asshole.
Like, how exactly does that work? Anyway.
So for folks who are new, you heard a little bit about Keeley in the bio, in the intro. But Keeley, can you please share once again for the 5th time a little bit more about how you got to where you are today in the field of sexuality?
Yes, of course. And that was an amazing introduction. I feel like I'm like walking into like an NBA arena. Like, woo, here we go. Where do we go from there? I think we should just stop and,
and mic drop.
Yes. So my name is Keeley Rankin. And for the last about 15 years now, I've worked as a sex and relationship coach, helping individuals and couples essentially reconnect to pleasure within their lives. So in their bedroom, in their relationships, and just in general in their worlds. Do you need more than that?
Oh, that's mic drop.
I was
Shit.
like, whoa, shit.
There's my mic drop.
Well, because we know you're like, there's a lot more to that. But I like succinct though. That's nice.
You kind of have an incredible, like you started a master class almost, and you train practitioners as well, right? Because I think that's important to mention. But I don't want to talk about you because you should talk about you, and we have questions for you anyway. So I like this moment, and you caught me off guard. I was like, wait, I was like, okay, Keeley. Not talking about yourself that much. We'll just talk you up. And is there anything else you want to share though with the listeners that don't know you?
She likes long walks on the beach, blue skies.
No, I think actually what I would say to people who don't know me is I'm really into dogs, and especially rescue dogs. That's like my big.
Me too.
I love that. And we've recorded with you in person. We've hung out with you in person. So, okay, this is your expertise, what we're talking about on this episode as well. And I don't remember how long ago episode 184 was, as Amy mentioned, years ago, because
we're at 402 or 3 now.
I was like 400 plus. Good job. So the first time you guessed it, it was that episode, and it was all about ED, and we put a lot of that that information into our book and other things as well. And it was about, we shifted the way we talked about erectile dysfunction, and instead, and you were the one that really, I feel like, cultivated this language shift, which was really helpful, and calling it ejaculatory control and delayed ejaculation versus thinking of it as any sort of dysfunction, which is really beautiful. So that was years ago. So we want to do this sort of again, but 2.0 version, years, knowledge, all of these things. So first off, overall, has the research or your understanding regarding penis control issues, challenges,
struggles. I like the word
struggles.
Yeah.
Have they shifted over the past few years since that interview, and anything new and different that you want to share with our audience?
That's a great question. Is there anything that's shifted since we did that interview? I don't know that I would say things have shifted in as much as like the things that we talked about in there don't hold true anymore. But I think one of the things that I've realized is that I think we can pull apart and look at like penis size issues or shame around penis or how long we last or how long it takes till we come, all of these things. But really it becomes this holistic experience of a person. So the question around penis size is often more about, how do you actually feel about yourself? How do you accept yourself? What's happening with your body image? How are you connecting with other people? What does it mean to let someone love you? So I think now, years into my practice of really deepening into this experience with all sorts of different people, with all sorts of different ideas around what perfection is or what it's supposed to be or how sex is supposed to look, I think it's a lot easier to now start to delineate into like, oh, okay, actually, this isn't really about that. It's kind of more about this particular piece, which is deeper than just like addressing how big is your cock, which is a really major concern that a lot of men genuinely have. Like, am I big enough? Will someone want to have sex with me or marry me or be in a relationship with me if my cock isn't a certain size? That's like
what about the functioning though? The functioning. What if they don't feel like it's functioning at a certain level or way or expectation?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the functioning piece is also just as painful, I think, right? Like if you're orgasming too quickly, a lot of the clients that I work with that struggle with early ejaculation, which I do have a course on premature ejaculation for anybody who's struggling with that. There is a 12-step module, walk you through step by step, everything I've learned from all the years of working with clients, like how to get you to mastery. And there is this piece of like, if I'm not able to perform in the way I think I'm supposed to, based on what I've been told or what I think or what April or Amy said, what Keeley said is normal, there is this feeling of like, I'm not good enough. I don't get to have what I want in life, which is oftentimes a real connected erotic experience, whether that's one night of great sex, like that's just thrilling and fun and you don't even know the person's name, or a long-term relationship where you're married and you're really sharing your lives with each other.
So what I'm hearing is it's not getting better. all the ideas, the stigma, our questions were not as direct. Is there a shift there, or like are things getting better, worse? Are we learning more about how like the blood flow works, about how society feels about these things? Are people getting more accepting and loving, or is it getting worse? I mean, I think the latter.
Political questions. Yeah. Are we getting more open or not? Yeah. I think there is a group of people who are really working very, very hard. And I feel like when I started in this field, I was sort of like one of, a couple people that were talking about sex in this way. And now I feel like there is this like so many people coming out of the weeds saying like, let's talk about sex, let's normalize sex. So I think there's a lot more professionals out there that are willing to stand up and say, actually, like, this is all wonderful and beautiful. And you get to experience all of this pleasure, and we can help you learn how to really get the most out of your body and enjoy. And I do think, of course, there's still a lot of shame in society. There's a lot of baggage. There's a lot of comparison. And I think social media and the roles of social media are often really times at play here. Like, I think porn is still a huge component. People aren't really talking often. I'm always still surprised when we talk about porn and you say to someone like, oh, porn is not real. Like, it is a performance. It is curated for the viewer's delight to titillate you and excite you. Like, it is not actually a real experience. And I am always still shocked when I have conversations with people and I say that and they're like, oh, really? And so I think there is still a lot of education that has to happen. And I think that probably goes back into more, what's happening in our school systems, but we don't need to touch that.
Thank God we have not God, if you're not into God, everyone, but thank goodness that we have your online courses that we've checked out. And we'll talk more about them in a little bit. And we'll get to the penis size thing in a little bit too. Mm-hmm. This episode is very much like penis shame. And this is a revisiting, because we have episode 184 that is very much about these other topics. But just for people that are new and have not heard the episode, can you personally define, and doing air quotes, everyone, because you'll hear how erectile dysfunction is probably not what Keeley is going to say, ED, erectile dysfunction, as well as ejaculatory control, but premature ejaculation and delayed ejaculation?
Yes. So I can walk you through them briefly, and I'll try and keep it brief, because for folks, I found that folks who don't struggle with these pieces are like, they tune out during it. So I'll try and keep it short. So there are sort of three primary main struggles around performance that men face. It's early ejaculation, delayed orgasm, and not being able to stay hard. So I do call it ED because I think it's so normalized to use the phrasing ED, but it really is about being able to like get hard and stay hard and feel good in your body and connected to your pleasure. So early ejaculation, I categorize as just orgasming earlier than you want. I break it down into like three components to that, but really it's the idea of like, when you're in the erotic experience, you're more concerned about how long you're lasting and whether or not you're going to come than actually enjoying the experience. So your whole arc of experience, even from like, for most people who struggle with early ejaculation, it's like before clothes even come off. It's even sometimes before kissing. It's like as the date starts, they're like, oh my God, what's going to happen when clothes come off? That's the type of person that ends up feeling like they want to work on their ejaculation control so they can move into all of these intimate, fun, sexy experiences and be relaxed and enjoy. Delayed orgasm is folks who go into their erotic experiences but can't quite find their orgasm. They get stuck, sort of like they go up the curve, which I talk about the arousal curve as a scale from 1 to 10. 1 is I'm interested in having sex. 4 is normally like I'm ready for penetration. For men, it would be hard enough for penetration. And 9 is the point of no return, which is like I'm heading for orgasm. There's no coming back. And 10 is orgasm. A lot of times folks who struggle with delayed orgasm is they sort of get stuck at like the 7. They go up and they can stay there for a very, very, very long period of time to the point where their partner is like tapping out and they're like, I don't want to do this anymore, or something wrong. I can't orgasm. Why can't you orgasm? Right? What's going on? It's often a very hidden struggle that men have because they're getting hard. They're staying hard. Sometimes they'll fake orgasm to get out of it. But there is so much shame enshrouded with like, why can't I orgasm and how do I explain that to my partner, especially in heterosexual dynamics specifically, because women think like, oh, if he didn't come, then I'm not sexy, or
it must be me.
I didn't do it for him, those sorts of pieces. And then the final one is that ED piece, or not being able to stay hard. So that is essentially, and I think it's actually great we're talking about this because maybe this is something new that I'm starting to talk about with people. There's this idea, I think, that's permeated in our society, probably from porn, that men should be erect like before their pants come off and that they shouldn't require any stimulation.
Oh, that's interesting. Like, that's so true that people think that. That's so interesting.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what's true is that most people, and women also, like you, require touch, either full body touch or actual genital stroking to find arousal. And that can sometimes take a period of time of stroking of a hard or of a soft cock to be able to find that arousal and build that arousal. And that isn't necessarily ED. ED is like, I'm doing all the things that are fun and pleasurable and it feels good, but I'm still not able to find my arousal. It can also be like getting hard, but upon penetration or upon moving or putting condoms on, you lose the erection and it doesn't come back. And that's oftentimes like a shame spiral or a performance spiral of like, oh my gosh, I lost it. It's never coming back.
Yeah. And can we dismantle something though? Because I think that it's important, at least in my opinion, to dismantle or make these two things very separate: orgasm and ejaculation, right? You can have an orgasm without having any fluid, or you can have pleasure without having fluid come out of your body, right? I know in terms of penis owners that there's a lot of different even research where folks can't get an erection and they can still have an orgasm.
Yeah,
and it's quite possible that nothing comes out of your penis. So can you speak a little to that? And then I have another question for you, of course.
Yeah. It's also something that happens for men who struggle with early ejaculation. Like they ejaculate, like the semen comes out, but they don't actually have the experience of pleasure moving through their body. So when I think of like an orgasm that feels like people are really, really connected to their body, there is that experience of like involuntary contractions in their pelvic floor. This goes for women as well. And for men specifically, it sends the rush of pleasure and energy through your body that says like, oh, that felt great. Kind of like, I don't know the way to describe it. It's like you're kind of slightly out in the cosmos at that moment. Mm-hmm. And for men, there's the ejaculation that comes through. That's sort of like the normal experience that most men would have. Now, the semen not coming through would be a couple of different reasons. One, there's just like none left, or you're doing a really particular type of anal play where like orgasms are starting to move through the body. You're getting that undulation and pulsing, but it's not necessarily activating that part of your body that would send the fluid through.
Yeah. And then add a vasectomy onto that and you get other fluids that have no semen. So, hey, well, mind blown.
A prostatectomy, right? There's a lot of different things that can happen. So those are probably two of the leading causes. So what are the leading, in your work and your experience, what do you believe are some of the leading causes of not only early ejaculation, but delayed ejaculation, as well as the, what are we saying, challenges?
ED, yeah. Erectile struggles.
Struggles.
Yeah, I like that.
So they're all very different. That's why they're like totally separate categories. When we take the experience of men who struggle with early ejaculation, it's primarily anxiety. As the arousal builds in the person's body, as the man starts to feel more pleasure, oftentimes I talk about it as like their anxiety is married to their arousal. Mm-hmm. So as the arousal begins to go up, like, so we start to get like hard enough to penetrate, the anxiety is with there as well. So anxiety carries with it this idea of like the fight or flight in the nervous system. So the system is under attack. The system is worried, is nervous, is like, okay, something's wrong here. And when the arousal curve is married to the anxiety curve, the higher it gets, the more stress the body is under. So it's actually the appropriate response to what the body's experiencing, which is anxiety. So the system goes, well, I better get out of this. So there's two options. You either lose your erection because that lowers anxiety, which does happen in really severe early ejaculation cases, or you just fly right into the orgasm because it, again, releases that anxiety. So the trick with the early ejaculation is to learn how to let the anxiety lower and be able to find the arousal without the anxiety married to it. So that's really like the whole main piece. And when you get into it, oftentimes when men start to think about it, like someone will go, oh yeah, wow, the way you describe that, I definitely notice there's anxiety in my body. And other times people will be like, well, I'm not anxious about that. Like I don't feel anxiousness. But once they actually start the process of getting into their bodies and really noticing what happens inside their system, inside their bones, inside their muscles, inside their heart rate, and all the things that are going inside of our bodies the whole time, they do realize like, oh, you're right. I am tensing. I am clenching. I am getting anxious. So it's really being able to learn our bodies and be able to connect with the arousal without the anxiety coming with us. Now, I'm going to tackle the ED piece first because the delayed orgasm is a beast to talk about, actually.
I remember that from last time. I was like, oh, shit.
I know. And I'm like, I'm not to scare people, but I do often say to the people who I work with, it's like, you need to give me a minimum of 6 months before you're going to see anything change. It's just a very complex system in the delayed orgasm space. The ED stuff is really interesting though. And more complex than the premature ejaculation or the early ejaculation. That's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward for most people. The ED piece is about oftentimes either performance anxiety. So that would be similar to the early ejaculation folks. Like I'm feeling anxious. I just really, really want to get this right. I really want to please my partner. There's this feeling of like, they're not good enough and I don't really know what to do. So sometimes just like general education, helping people come back to pleasure in their bodies is really, really helpful. And because oftentimes what I see with folks who are struggling with the ED space is like they've left behind what actually feels good for them. And they're trying to do something for their partner. They're trying to get their partner excited without bringing their own desire or what turns them on. And they've kind of gone into this like tilted over, really concerned about the other person and not tuning into what actually feels good for them, which is a really important part of sex. Like we each need to know and bring with us like our own toolkit of things that we like, that we can ask for, that we can lean into and really enjoy and share with the other person. So the other piece of the ED is around actually being able to access in the moment, like what truly turns you on and to let yourself go for it. So if we think about a person who's like leaning in and trying to get everything for the other person, doing what they want, they're leaving behind like, oh, this is what I actually want. So they're not connected at all with those impulses. And so they're overriding their own impulses to try things on, to do things, which then sends a message to the body, like, we're actually not safe here. Like, no need to show up. Like, not important. So that's another huge component to it. Of course, there's also the situation with ED of like, it's the appropriate response to a situation where the person is actually not safe. The relationship with that other person, they haven't felt accepted or welcomed. They just genuinely like in their body don't feel safe enough to soften and connect with their pleasure. So their body's protecting them in some way by saying like, I'm not going to actually let us move into this because being this close with that person isn't safe. And sort of another piece to it. Now, I think I covered all those. Now, the delayed orgasm space there's so many things that can be happening, but the place that I often check with people is around how they're actually practicing self-pleasure. Because typically the conversation around delayed orgasm comes in of like, I can't I can't orgasm inside of my partner. I can't orgasm from vaginal penetration. So the piece I get really curious about is like, how are you actually touching your body in masturbation? Like, what has your experience of self-pleasure been? And how can we start to get that in alignment with what it's going to be like to be with an actual person? How can we start to line up like the actual experience of being with a person? Because there's two ways humans are sexual. We're either solo sex or partner or partnered sex. And oftentimes with the folks who struggle in the delayed orgasm is like their solo play is really rich. They're really enjoying it. They get a lot out of it. They're playing oftentimes for lots of time. They're spending like this, they have this whole rich world, but then they come in to be with a partner and they're not bringing all of those pieces with them. So they're missing a lot of the things that actually turn them on. And they've also conditioned and trained their bodies to be reactive to a particular type of touch or a particular type of play. So sometimes we just have to like remove a bunch of things, strip it down, take porn out, take their own hand out, bring in like a fleshlight or a male sex toy and say like, this is how we're going to play to help you because your goal is, it's not that there's anything wrong with what they're doing. That's not the piece here. It's just that they want to be able to bring that part of themselves into that, the relationship with another person. So it's like linking those two things over. And then the other deeper piece, the more psychological piece is oftentimes a deep trust piece that I can't trust that I can fully let go here and be myself and find my orgasm and find my pleasure, that's deeply unsafe on oftentimes a very, very unconscious level for people.
This wasn't on our question list, but I was thinking about people who have not gotten used to using condoms, penis owners. And so there feels like this delayed orgasm piece using condoms, right? So would your homework be masturbate with condoms on?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For clients who actually lose their erection when condoms go on, because for some reason that sends their system into like, this isn't sexy and their erection goes down. Yeah. I say practice on your own, practice in a safe space where there's not so much pressure, like get used to it. So you know your body and you get comfortable with like what it smells like, what it sounds like when you open a condom, what it feels like on your actual cock to feel sensation on your condom. Yeah.
Because I have a friend that can't come without using condoms. He
really
cannot. He needs it to orgasm.
The safety piece, maybe.
I have
would
no
ask
idea.
about fear of babies. Yeah.
I don't know. He's been with his partner for like 15 years, and I don't know. I haven't gotten deep.
Maybe he doesn't want more kids.
He doesn't have any. He doesn't have any kids.
But doesn't want any kids.
I don't know.
Yeah. Possible.
I mean, there's so many things that could be going on there with him not here to represent himself. You know, we could go off on a fairy tale land of like the potential reasons why that's sexy for him, but it's sexy for him and he knows.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know what? I was just bringing that up because there's always different, there's different sides to the coin. There's different ends of the spectrum. So it could work anyway.
Yeah, right. And you already shared a number of tools, and we have a whole episode, everyone, 184, because soon we will get into more penis size shame. But do you have any top tips, tools that you didn't share that you want people to know about any of these things? I realize I keep saying delayed ejaculations, delayed orgasm.
That's okay. But it's all the same thing in many words. But I think that anybody who is struggling with performance anxiety, and this goes for women as well, I think that there's this feeling of like, I'm broken. Everyone else has this figured out. You know, what's true is that at some point, most people who are actively sexual and wanting to remain sexual are going to come up against a experience where they feel like, oh, I have a struggle here, or I have something's wrong with me, or I'm not able to find my orgasm easily enough, or it's taking too long, or I'm coming too quickly. I mean, I think anybody who's exploring this territory will come across this feeling at one point of like, oh my God, something's wrong with me. And oftentimes, if I get people in my office early enough, it's really just taking a deep breath and asking them like, what do you enjoy? Can you lean into that more? Can you take off this veil of like, this is how it's supposed to be? And can we just earnestly, with no judgment, get really curious about what turns you on? You know, I've worked with some clients for, almost like 10 years. And what's true is that our sexuality is always changing. I've noticed that with myself as well. It's like I had a baby 3 years ago and like my body is so different. The parts of my body that used to feel sexy don't anymore. The sensation has changed so much. And so I think if we can hold ourselves as these organisms that are changing and growing and adjusting and be curious from that place without shaming or comparing, then I think the potential to have a life full of really, really wonderful, fun, shameless sex is possible.
Yeah.
I'm fanning myself because it's fucking hot and I like this conversation too. And this fan doesn't make any noise, but it's hot where we live. And I thank you for that. And I think that's important because look, we all are given what we have with our bodies, and we can always work on what we have and what we're given. And if we're willing, we can create the sex life that we imagine that is possible. And that's something that I firmly believe, because it's like we said in the beginning. Remember, we talked about how sex changes, bodies change. You had a baby, things change. You go through perimenopause or puberty, or you go through a life-changing, life-altering surgery, right? Where you didn't know. So,
car accidents. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
So there's so many things. And I think that these all are, I think they're all related to each other in different ways, but they're all important pieces. And I think if you were born with a cock or a penis or whatever you want to call it, a dick, a flagpole, that you feel that you've been shamed or that you have shame around, I think that it's important for us to talk about that, because I know that we do have listeners out there that have asked us about what they can do with their penis at this size. And in my sex education certification, there was a whole segment on penis shame and penis size being what it is today, especially in Western cultures. And so I won't go to that, but the average cock size, and we've had someone that had a 14-inch penis, the world's largest.
It's not average.
No.
That was a great episode, by the way.
Yes.
I highly recommend everyone listen to that.
She's trying to say it's a lot.
The world's largest
medically verified natural penis.
That's
mouthful.
Hashtag.
But literally and
real. So the average cock size is debated. I was going to ask a question, but I was like, we just had this episode. I'm happy that you listened to it, and he was phenomenal. And his book is going to come out. But we want to talk about the opposite end of the spectrum when folks have penis shame, right? Around maybe they feel it's smaller. So the average cock size is debated, and it's based on time, location, where you're at in your life. If you're whatever, we know how the debates, right? Size. And so let's make it broad and talk about, for a lot of the countries, they're 4 to 6 inches and
hard,
long when they're hard,
long and hard, yeah,
long and hard. Whew, this is a hard mouthful. So if you are on the lower end of that spectrum, let's say they're below even the 4-inch length when they're hard and long and hard, what are some of the top tips for how people with size shame? What are the top tips for those folks? What can they do to help them have the sex that they want?
Right. So I think when we include penis shame, we have to also talk about color and shape and hair and balls.
Yeah.
And also there is a lot of shame for men when they're flaccid, how large their cock is. Like they may have a normal size cock when they're hard, but when they're flaccid, it feels really small. And there is a ton of shame around that.
Shrinkage, Seinfeld.
Or a baby bird. It's like a baby bird.
Right. Yeah. And there's a lot of men who have stories of being in the locker room and having someone make a comment. And so now they're petrified to ever let a woman or whoever they're having sex with, see them not hard. And that causes them a ton of anxiety. So much so, again, that they are actually not having sexual experiences. It's stopping them. So I want to just expand this because I think there's this specific question of people who feel like their cocks are smaller than average and they go into an experience thinking oh, this person's going to think my cock is small. What do I do? And then I think there's just people who in general feel a lot of shame about any part of their genitals. So if we start with the piece of a man who feels like he's really small, I think first off, it's really good to start to look at that for yourself, on your own before you start to figure out how do I make this work during sex? One option is to take the course that we just released, Keeley Sex Class. It walks you through a lot of things around self-awareness, communication, body image. There's so many components to how we all feel about our bodies. And I think what's true is pretty much any person that you ask them, how do you feel naked, is going to have some sense of body insecurity. I don't like this thing. And it's wild because sometimes the more beautiful people I have in my office, quintessentially beautiful, could be on, magazines, they tend to pick their bodies apart like the most intensely. Like they are so hard on themselves. And I think what's also really true too is that we have to remember like the most beautiful people in the world are not just naturally having amazing sex. Like these two things don't even go together. This idea of like, if you're just beautiful, you have great sex.
Nope. It is.
These two things are just like totally separate, but I think they often in our minds get linked of like, oh, that person's so beautiful, or that guy seems so strong, or I saw him in the locker room. He must have this great experience. There's this projection that can happen with people. And so I think it's really, really good to either talk to a professional or do some reading or just do some journaling to self-reflect a little bit about like, what are some of the beliefs that you're carrying? I think it's also really, really good if someone's feeling like they're smaller in size or know they're smaller in size to really look at like, what are they telling themselves about their lovability or their lover ability? So like, I can never pleasure a woman because of my size. Like, it's just not true. Like, it's just flat out not true.
Yeah, mouth, you got fingers, you still have your genitals, you can grind, you have sex toys. It's endless. Your energy, the words you say.
Yes. I think what's true and what I normally tell men who come in and they say like, look, I'm smaller than average. I know I'm smaller than average and I feel really insecure about it. There are women who are size queens. We're talking primarily about heteronormative folks here right now, right? There are women out there that do care. And I would never lie to someone and say like, oh, everyone, people don't care. Like some women really, really genuinely do. I have a good girlfriend and it really matters to her. And she has ended relationships over it. And that's really, really, really painful for the men in that situation. And what's true is they were not a good fit. It's a preference thing. And I think we can shame people all day long and say like, you shouldn't have that preference or it shouldn't matter. But at the end of the day, it does. And I think it's knowing ourselves and making decisions. And, that is a really, really tough one and a really painful one. And what's true is there's a lot of women out there that don't care how large your cock is, that they are happy to be with a man for many other reasons. It's like size is not a priority. I think it would be interesting to really truly see if we could get an answer from women, like how much does it matter? Because I think for some people it matters a lot, like my friend, and they would end a relationship. And for some people, I actually have another girlfriend I'm thinking of, like she does not care. Like it's just not, she loves to be sexual with her partner, but it's really, really not important the size. She prefers like the type of sex she prefers is mostly missionary. Like it's much more about connection and closeness than like the feeling of being filled up, which is oftentimes what you hear when women say like they really want a larger cock. They want that feeling of being filled up. And I think that there's sometimes a lot of grief for men when I have this conversation with them. Like it's very sobering because I think, some of the other therapists they may be seen as like, the person who loves you, will love you no matter what. But it's like, the truth is like some women will not be a good fit for you if they're size queens. And that's a really, really, really painful, sobering statement for a lot of people to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I did one of the mini certification, whatever training, so this one was Tantra with Barbara Corellis, and we were going around saying what we wanted more in cocks, I think was the exercise. And one person was like, more hard cocks, but the person next to them, and I know we're talking about size, right? But I'll link it to that. The person next to them was like, no, more soft cocks. And that person wanted less penetration.
Right.
They wanted, and like, it doesn't mean that penetration wasn't a part of it. And so what you're speaking to sounds like it's very penetration driven, which could be the erectile dysfunction thing being hard, but also size is very much about penetration. And I'm one of those people where, I like penetration, but it's not like my number one thing for why I have sex with people. It certainly is not.
Right. And I think it's really important that we all keep talking about like the different parts of sex. So I think we say sex and people are like intercourse, but there is so many components to sex and there's so many parts of ourselves that come into the bedroom to have sex, or really we're going to make it bigger. It's like, it's not even have to happen in the bedroom. Right. And so it's that piece of like, how do we start to have the conversation of like, what are people wanting and how are they finding people that are good fits for them? And so in general, when I think about like positions for people who have, a smaller than the average that we're talking about here, penis, it's really, I don't know that, again, it's, I guess, funny we end up in this conversation about positions. my experience with people is that it's not necessarily about finding one position, because it's not going to actually fit with every single person you meet. That has a lot to do with like body mobility, body size, like the ergonomics of how people's pelvises are placed and what actually feels good for them. So like someone with a smaller penis may have a partner and it's like, oh, my previous partner loved to be on top all the time and grind, where it's like, no, this partner really wants to spoon all the time. So there isn't really a one size fits all for someone who feels like they struggle with their relationship with their cock that feels smaller. It's really about like figuring out and being curious and being playful with whoever they're in the bedroom with and however long they've been, and trying different things and checking in and seeing like, where is the most pleasure here today in this moment, versus like, I'm going to pre-strategize what I'm going to do when I get in there, when I get someone home, which I know is scary, because if you're lacking confidence, you're like, just tell me what to do, because then I'll feel confident. But ultimately that doesn't teach anybody anything. And it doesn't actually give them tools in the moment to follow and move into like the impulse of what feels good so they continue to have great sex. It just limits them of like, okay, Keeley said that this is the position I should try, so I'm going to go in there and do this every time. But then they end up back at my door like, okay, now what? So I feel like it's really about like teaching confidence and teaching people how to feel into their bodies and how to read other people's bodies, how to listen with all of our senses, and then make moves from there.
Yeah. So what if I'm the partner, right? I'm the partner who has a lover, a partner, what if we're in a relationship, whatever the dynamic is. And I know that they have some insecurities around their penis size. And I might even be like, I want to learn how to work with this, but I don't want to shame them. Like, what can I do to create a safer space and also a more pleasurable space for both of us?
Yeah, I love that we're talking about this, because I think it's really important. If there's something going on in the relationship, it is really, really important to talk about it. It's important to bring it up. And we want to bring it up in safe spaces. So like anything around performance specifically, like, when someone is not hard in the bedroom, that is not the time to be like, what is wrong with you? Why are you not hard in the bedroom? Right? So if we go back to your question, it's like finding an appropriate time to say like, hey, sweetie, I'm just curious. Like, there's a part of me that's wondering, do you feel insecure about the size of your cock? Like, do you want to talk about it with me? And I think the important thing to remember about these types of conversations is that they're ongoing. And for folks who've never had a conversation like this before, they may feel totally scared, caught off guard, not know what to say. Or sometimes what's true is people don't even realize that they're feeling insecure about that until someone brings it up. So I think it's important to say, like, if you want to talk about it, we can talk about it. And I'm also always here. Maybe we can talk about it in a couple of days after you think about it. So we're not like pinning people down to like, I've decided this is an issue for you, or this is an issue for me, but I want to hear how you feel about it. And we have to talk about it without giving people time, because sex, intimacy, relationships, all these pieces, they need time. We need lots of time to process, to figure out how we're feeling, and they're ongoing conversations. So I think talking about it outside the bedroom, and then getting really curious and really exploratory about like, what can we do to play with this? Like, what would feel good that I could say to you in the moment that you would believe? Because if you go in there and you're like, you have the biggest cock I've ever seen, and that person knows that they don't feel that, that's not true, it's just not going to land, right? But can you find something about their cock that you really like? Is it the shape? Is it the curve? Is it the head of their penis? Is it the way the rim looks? Is it the way the semen comes out? Is it the slit on the top? Did I say this? I'm not sure. The color, or the way it comes out of the body when it's hard, or the way that it looks when it's soft, or, there's so many ways to compliment someone's genitals that isn't just like, your cock is big. Like, that's very top level in many regards. And even if you do like the size, right? Even if you do like your partner size, I recommend this too, because I think it's really important to really like check out these parts of our partner's bodies that really only we see for the most part, and to let them know what we really appreciate, what we really like. And then just to ask them like later, like, what was it like to hear me say that? What did it feel good? Like, should we try that again? Or do we want to try a different direction? That's sort of like one way to start to play with it. Also, to so talking about appreciations, but it could be talking about other types of appreciations. Like, I just love how it feels in my hand. I love getting you hard. I love feeling your cock get hard in my hand. I love feeling that power over you. I love feeling like you're close to the edge and you haven't come, or I love feeling you in my mouth. I mean, again, you can go through all these variations in the ways that you interact with that person's body part and then tell them specifically what you actually enjoy about it. And the more like clear, nuanced, nitpicky you can get, oftentimes the more people really enjoy it, actually. There's an exercise I really love called body honoring that I talk about in the new course for couples in the communications part. And it's all about this, but it's head to toe. It's like head to toe, like really looking like you've never looked at this person's body before. Like, what do you like? What do you see? What do you enjoy? What brings you pleasure? All of these pieces? And that goes entirely for genitals as well. Both directions.
We're so excited about your sex class too. And because unfortunately we have to wrap up, but I want to say with this small, quote unquote, small penis piece, we talked about this on an episode of the past, I think with Erwan and Alicia, but we were talking about how the types of bodies that people want during different eras of human beings is so different. And the Greeks loved small penises, and that meant that was a form of masculinity. And you could do some body worshiping and be like, study the ancient Greeks and the statues that were made of because different times, who knows what other beautiful things on your body would be appreciated. Maybe not in this time, but why not bring it back? Be the Greek human that you want to be, or if you like the Roman, then be Roman, or just be fucking you. Okay.
Yeah. How about that?
But if you need
the easiest route,
but that's inspiration, right? So it just doesn't matter what people think now, because 200,000 years ago, we weren't existing, but 200 years ago, we were. And the Greeks lived a long ass time ago. And I'm not a historian, y'all, but I will say that's like, I think that's good information. I look at body types. That remember when women were appreciated for being curvier, and then it was like stick figure humans that were much appreciated, and then vaginas,
the Barbie look,
which you could never even like actually walk if you were the human.
You'd fall over and break your back.
Yes. So I just want to bring it to that while we wrap up, and see if you have anything to say about maybe changing the mind's view of the parts that you were given. And maybe they're not to this or not enough that. Maybe they're just right for you because that's what you were born with.
Yeah. Right. Well, I love that you're talking about the what was happening back in ancient Rome, because what's true is that back in those times, women were treated the same as cattle. They were property, and men were the only ones that could have real love. And they were your only real lover that you could be in love with was another man. So it was a very, very, very different time. The way that everything functioned in society is, quite far out there. There's a really wonderful book called The Contrarian History to Marriage. It's a great book. She goes into these pieces in depth about like what it actually meant to have, to be married, to be partnered, and all these different things. And so I think what you're saying is such a good point, is like we compare ourselves to today's standards of like what is beautiful, same as like the beauty standards with women. I remember back, I think it was the 90s, there was a study, they took some of the women who were rated in America as like the most beautiful over to other parts of the world where actually food was more scarce. And they showed bodies of like who looks the best. And they thought that the people who were thin, that were rated the most beautiful on Western cultures, were actually seen as sickly there. I remember I traveled in Sri Lanka, and on billboards, there were women with like tummies hanging over their outfits. They have the special outfits that they show their tummies. And I was like, wow, this is fascinating. So again, a lot of these are social stigmas. They truly are. And I think what's important is that we allow people to feel how they've been influenced by the ideas of social norms. And then we help them break out of like what's actually true for them, and how does their body actually feel, and heal the relationship with their genitals. If they've been berating their genitals their whole life, or berating their bodies their whole life, how can they actually create a different relationship? And often that comes from a relationship from the inside out, feeling the body parts. There's all sorts of different places to go with that. But I think it's a really, really good point. So I'm happy you brought that in at the end.
Well, I'm happy that you spoke to that as well. And It was 3,000 years ago that the Greeks were there, if you're talking about, because I hate saying
April will
things
look it up.
and not, and you know what else is that during the Roman period, I watched a lot of, there's like some beautiful historical pieces now about Cleopatra and women in Egypt, and they were very respected and had a lot of power.
Right.
And there's not to say that things aren't shifting into this vast reality of just accepting one another for who we are, no matter where we were born or where we currently live, and what goods are under our clothes, right? Or
Right.
exposed if we take our clothes off for someone. And I like to thank you, number one, for not only being on our show the fifth time, but for this new class that you created, which is, we've talked about it because Amy and I were incredibly just inspired by the work, because it's beautiful content that you created, and it's a class, but don't think about it as a class like you're going to be bored to death, because they're, I think, inspirational modules, if you will, that you can take with you on and on. And there's I don't know how many, but there's things that they can be applied to different parts of your life, wherever you are, because there's so many different modules. I think you said like 500 or 700, maybe something crazy.
8 hours and the number 12.
Yes.
Yeah,
I remember
there's 12
700 about something.
modules. There's 12 modules and it's 8 hours, and each module's around like between 8 to 11 chapters inside.
Where'd I get 700? Get damn it.
I don't know. Maybe it's the year 700. Maybe,
Too many numbers coming at me. Okay, so this is where I'm going, because this class you worked, I don't know how long, maybe 700 hours. Maybe that's where it came from. And so
it's about a year. We worked about a year on it altogether.
I didn't do the math there, but it's a lot of hours. So how can people, not only because we want to share this class with all of our listeners, and if you haven't met Keeley yet from previous episodes, you're meeting her now, and she's fabulous, and we cannot commend her work enough. So I know that you have a special offer that's limited for our listeners of Shameless Sex.
Yes.
And how can people find and work with you? Because I believe you're still doing some of the other work that you were doing before you launched this class. So please share.
Yes.
And I just want to add this last tidbit about April and I. So we, we're sex educators. We're so special, but we watched this. It's a course, right? It's this whole series. It changed our lives. Like we really cool. learned things from it, and it was just like in a way that felt like really approachable, safe, and also just like kind of yummy and juicy. So thank you for that. Just wanted to put that up.
Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate it, because we put a lot of energy into the new course. So the new course is entitled Keeley's Sex Class, and you can find it on my website, which is KeeleyRankin.com, KeelyRankin. And when you go up to courses, you'll pop down and it'll say the sex class. So, and I want to have a special offer for your listeners. So running from the time that you hear this episode into October 31st, there is a special offer for 15% off called Shameless 15. You can type that into the coupon code, get a special percentage off for yourselves. And the course is really meant for, when I started thinking about what I wanted to offer to the world, which, comes out of, I do still have a waiting list, and I do have mentees that I took on to tackle the people who were coming that wanted to work with me. And I was like, okay, I'll bring on like more people and that will help out. But there's still people coming. There's still people who need help. So when I thought about like, what have I learned in 15 years? Like, what can I offer to the world so that I can take all of this information of sitting with clients, for every day for many, many hours for 15 years. I'm like, what can I give back? And I was like, okay, you know what? I want to just take everything I've learned, my perspective, and the main pillars of like what I think people need in order to move into their worlds where they're bringing their eroticism with them and able to access pleasure and just relax and have fun and joy and play. And that's sort of what the Keeley Sex Class is. It's what I really built it around, is like these main pillars of like, what do people need? And so I love that you guys got something out of it. That makes me feel great. It's my intended purposes. Mm-hmm. And I think it is pretty fun. In general. So it isn't just like a course, like you're sitting listening to me talk. There's a lot of me actually running you through exercises like I would do if you're working with me one-on-one. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of like looking at yourself, asking yourself questions, and really, really trying on new things. Because it's my belief, it's like, we can sit here and we can talk about it and you can hear us talk, but ultimately sex is about learning your own body, learning your own boundaries, learning your own blind spots, trying on new things, and learning how to follow your impulses. That's what we've been talking about a lot here, like with the performance stuff is like, what is my impulse? What do I want? What's happening? What do I need? And that requires actually doing things. So built into the sex class is the whole way long. I walk you through like, try this exercise, do this exercise multiple times, see what happens, see how it changes your relationship with your body, with yourself, with your sexuality, with your genitals, and with, of course, other people. So
and who is this class for? Can you tell? Because I want to make sure people know.
Yeah. So the course is for people who are single and people who are in relationship. You don't need to take it with a partner if you're partnered, but it probably would be great since you guys could both focus on the same things. And I will say it is directed primarily at heteronormative couples. But
gender doesn't matter. Penis, vulva, anything between doesn't matter.
No, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Yeah. And I walk through, there is a lot of like a sex education in there. I'm just sort of like helping people understand what the other gender might be going through. Cause I think sometimes that's a really important part of like, sometimes I get, women in my office and they're like, oh, my partner's just coming so quickly. I'm just like mad at him and I don't know what to do. And I'm like, well, trust me, there's no man ever on this planet was like, I want this to be over faster. Like that is not a thing. So, sometimes there's just this general, like, let's talk about like what this really is and what might be happening for that person. So I think there's also a lot of like opening up a perspective of like what the other person might be experiencing, which I think is really helpful in couples.
I'm so proud of you for launching this very deep and in-depth, I guess those are the same things, but in-depth course and sex class that is evergreen. And again, Keeley's sharing 15% off with you that are listening now until October 31st, 2024, when you use code shameless15. But after that, if you are listening and it's November 2025, you can always get 5% off forever. Go to KeeleyRankin.com and then just use shameless, the code shameless at checkout. And then you can get 5% off, which look, saving money is great, but Keeley, we so appreciate you because this is, if you think about it, like you said, I think this was said maybe on this episode, maybe is the episode because we've recorded 2 today, where we talk about the price of thing. Like it costs a lot more money to go to the doctor and try to get surgeries or get pills than investing in yourself and into this holistic approach at your body and your sexuality. So that's why I approach this with the holistic love of it. It costs some money, but you'll save in the end.
I think you have more like lasting effects too, because you're doing a deeper dive into yourself and your relationship or, wherever you are. And that's why I wanted to just put that out there that like it was educational, but also it was fun and juicy.
We all need some of that.
Yeah. More fun and juicy right now, right?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Well, I really appreciate this episode, and we always hate saying goodbye to our beautiful guests and also our beautiful listeners. But guess what? We're back every Tuesday, and more people can find folks like Keeley and Keeley's sex class if you rate us, because that just helps just the masses find shameless sex. So tell your friends, tell your neighbor, tell people that you want and you care about to have a better life, because all of this, it kind of pays it forward, in my opinion. It's good karma for you forever. Okay. Promise. All right, y'all. So if you haven't rated us, fine, but we will be back next Tuesday, and we still love you. Keeley, we love you too. And we'll see you soon. All right, y'all. But I said, see you next Tuesday already, right?
Do you know what that means?
Da, da, da. Find out later on YouTube.
Ciao for now.
Ciao for now.